Today on CityCast Boise, I've got Boise State Public Radio's Jimmy Dawson with me to reflect on the one-year anniversary of the killing of 4 University of Idaho students and how their community is healing. We also puzzle over the latest antics from Ammon Bundy before diving into our ideal Thanksgiving menus. It's Friday, November 17th. I'm Blake Hunter, and this is what Boise's talking about. Hey, Jimmy, it's great to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, always good to be here, Blake.
So we're going to jump right into some pretty somber news. This past Monday marked the one-year anniversary of the killing of 4 University of Idaho students, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, and Ethan Chapin. They were murdered, in a house near campus in Moscow. I'm sure that we all remember that happening last year. What a tough year for their families and for the University of Idaho community. And really, even down here in Boise, we've really felt it. And then as a reminder, the suspect in their killing, Brian Kohberger, is on trial, but that's kind of in a delay stage. But earlier this week, the University of Idaho held a vigil for the victims and for their families. Our producer, Evelyn, reached out to former KTVB reporter Alex Duggan, who's now up at the Spokesman Review. I'm sure that listeners know who she is, friend of the show, but she went to that vigil and she told Evelyn a couple things about the energy shift over the past year. So much has happened that it really feels like the worst, the worst has already been happened. This town was just like pounded by true crime kind of media types. And really what's left now, a whole year later, is like what's left now is just the victims and their families and the community. And so how have you seen this case shift in just the last couple of months and over this whole year?
Yeah, I would say that, like you mentioned, there was just this huge blitzkrieg of national media coming in the, couple months after the murders. You had what I like to call murder porn podcasters, true crime podcasters, TikTok psychics. You had people masquerading as journalists going there and really just trying to extract as much as they could out of everyone in that community. And it was just such a drain, I can imagine. I'm from Lewiston originally and still have friends in Moscow, and they just talked about how horrendous that was. Just always wondering whether you're going to run into someone on the street taking a live stream or video or whatever it might be. Yeah. And I know that Alex had a good section in her article about the vigil further on down, talking just about like the psychological impact of dealing with the media fallout from all of that, which I recommend everyone go read in the Spokesman Review. But it's just a horrible situation, and we're I think just trying to get our feet under us after a year.
Yeah, there are already books out about this, which is just like,
and the trial hasn't even started.
It literally hasn't started. Yeah, but one of the things that Alex said too was just that at the vigil, Kohberger's name was not mentioned. It's all just like victim-centered at this point, which is how it should be. It's where it should be at. It's where it should have been at the whole time. But at the actual vigil itself, it was just to commemorate the victims and honor their families.
And I think that's kind of telling that the national media was not at the vigil, right? They don't bother to, actually go to the events that center the victims, yeah. Which is, it just speaks volumes, and it's incredibly sad. And I don't necessarily blame people for having an eroded faith in the media landscape. Unfortunately, they kind of pass that on to the local journalists who are by and large doing their best and certainly did not participate in those sorts of shenanigans as we saw in like the early unfolding weeks of the manhunt for Kohberger, et cetera. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a sad state of affairs.
Well, yeah, this is a case that we'll continue to be watching, and yeah, just sending love and support to the community up in Moscow. Jimmy, you wrote about the latest antics from Ammon Bundy in this St. Luke's lawsuit. We'll get into what actually happened this week, but I want you, if you can, remind listeners what's going on here. How did this start?
Yeah, because there's a lot to
Yeah.
to kind of remember.
You have to time travel back into a time that most of us want to forget. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple years ago, you had the grandson of one of Ammon Bundy's business partners and close personal friends, Diego Rodriguez, apparently was having some health problems. You know, the grandson was an infant, less than a year old, and apparently had missed some health checks that were
Right.
required under state law. And so police went and, took the child and brought him to the hospital where he received treatment for his conditions. And that didn't sit well with Ammon or Diego. They both called for protesters to go to St. Luke's, whether that was Meridian Hospital or the actual downtown Boise location as well. And so we had a couple days of protests where the hospital at one point was on lockdown. You had ambulances being diverted from the downtown St. Luke's location. And then you had Diego and Ammon both online talking about how St. Luke's was trafficking children and murdering them and profiteering off of all of this, which caused St. Luke's to file a defamation suit, which they eventually won last August with a roughly $52 million payout that Diego Rodriguez and Ammon Bundy were supposed to pay. And ever since then, we've been just tracking whether or not they're hiding their assets in like a whole structure of LLCs or, handing off, deeds to your house, to your friends, et cetera, whatever the case might be, as St. Luke's alleges. And they have continued, they being Diego and Ammon, have both continued to go online and say all of these things again, even though a judge ordered them not to. So this particular court hearing was going to be on a contempt of court charge for Ammon. And he, in the past, has refused to show up to court dates. He has a history of this.
I was going to say, how many contempt of court charges does he have? Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, well, this will be, depends on which case you're talking about.
Right,
So
exactly. Yeah.
In this case, you've got one until this week when he has another one for failing to show up. He sent an email to the judge in the matter saying that, I have much more important things to do and that he won't show up to any further court proceedings. So that obviously doesn't sit well with a judge. Speaking of which, this judge had already moved this hearing back a little bit so that Ammon could go and harvest whatever crops that he was raising at the time. He had requested that and she granted it. And she was not happy. Judge Nancy Baskin in Ada County Court, basically said, Mr. Bundy needs to learn that the court calendar is not his calendar and he can't just cancel it at any time he chooses. So she set out another warrant for his arrest for another contempt of court charge, $250,000.
Wow.
Forfeited his $10,000 bond that he had already posted in, the previous contempt charge. And we're just waiting for him to get picked up on this. It took a long time for the Gem County Sheriff in the previous contempt charge to actually go and serve that warrant, which was at a Emmett High School football fundraiser, which there was video of.
That video, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's how we got here. And this is what the newest information has. There was a trial supposed to be set for this week. Didn't happen. Do you know when? I mean, I'm assuming that we just don't have an actual date set yet of any idea of when this trial might get pushed to. I mean, it obviously depends on what Bundy does or if he does get arrested. Right. Yeah. I think it's all dependent on him being present in court and whether or not, he actually posts that $250,000 bond. Who knows? Yeah. Ammon Bundy is just this figure in Idaho politics that to some extent we all just have to deal with. And so how do you see this in like the long term of Bundy's kind of playbook? Because this isn't the Oregon situation. Like, he's not really successfully rallying the troops anymore. I mean, we saw his gubernatorial race kind of fell through, and then the St. Luke's thing happened. And we've talked about him a little bit on the show of just, it kind of feels like maybe his influence is waning a little bit. Can you speak to that? I mean, you as a journalist, you've covered him for a while. Do you feel like you can speak to that at all? Yeah, and one of my former coworkers, Heath Drusen, actually did a story on this maybe a year and a half ago. And I think you're right. I think his influence has waned a little bit, especially in light of he tried to insert himself in this sort of North Idaho case where this family was saying that they were getting forced off of their ranch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in Clearwater County. Yeah, it was outside of Orfino. And he went up there. He called to rally the troops up there. Some of them showed up. A lot of his former allies now, keyword former, and realized, oh, wait, no, they just didn't pay their mortgage. Never mind, please forget that I was here. And then left. Yeah, and so it's like, that sort of misstep really, as I believe Heath put it, kind of drove a spike in there of him not necessarily doing his research, just kind of being reactionary as opposed to being tactical and understanding like what each particular situation and its, circumstances are.
Yeah. Well, to some extent, we will continue covering this. We try to be careful about how much time we dedicate to talking about him. Moving on a little bit, I just want to bring attention to listeners' attention to, we're not going to have like a Friday News Roundup episode next Friday because of Thanksgiving. But so that means that in the meantime, before we have another Friday News Roundup, the city of Boise's new zoning code will be implemented. It actually gets implemented on December 1st. It's not going to change a ton of things overnight because it mostly affects new development. But just want to flag that to people. And also that Boise Dev reported this week that the Reject Boise Upzone folks kind of put their campaign to rest and said, especially after the election last week, which again, I can't believe that was only a week ago. But after the election and, a whole slate of city council candidates, all 4 of the races were won by people who supported the zoning code rewrite. They had a comment in a video that they posted that was like essentially like the voters didn't agree with us. The voters didn't speak out in the way that we wanted them to. And so that kind of era of this bigger era of the zoning code rewrite is dying down. And so I just wanted to let people know about that. All right, now moving on to some more fun things. Every week we try to kind of talk about what we've got going on the weekend, and it's kind of a weird weekend just because Thanksgiving is next week. But do you have anything fun going on? What are you up to?
I guess it depends on whether or not you consider it fun. I do.
Okay.
So finalizing the Thanksgiving menu the last several years. Right. Yeah. So the last several years, I haven't been able to go home for Thanksgiving with my family. So it's like, okay, well, we're having Friendsgiving on the actual Thanksgiving day. And so finalizing that menu, I'm not a big turkey fan. So I usually make like Peruvian chicken.
Ooh.
Okay. So doing that, I guess, you're a better person than I am if you do a turkey trot this weekend or on Thanksgiving.
I just received a text from my family yesterday that was about participating in a turkey trot, and I've been ignoring it. But I'm a family of runners, so it's kind of hard to avoid. But yeah, I
no.
feel you.
Well, if you do go, please enjoy yourself.
We'll see. Okay, I've been asking everyone, we're just going to derail this conversation now. I've been asking everyone because I love to build a menu and all of that stuff. What are your essential Thanksgiving sides? Because I imagine that the Peruvian chicken, instead of a turkey, maybe changes some things. Do you let that influence things? What are your sides?
So not too much, actually.
Okay.
I do a sage sausage stuffing.
Okay.
Which
classic.
I make myself. There's nothing wrong with stovetop if that's all you got time for. I still think that's delicious. Let's see, roasted Brussels sprouts are key here, and then whatever everyone else brings. I think I also usually bake a couple loaves of bread.
No mashed potatoes?
This is a very controversial thing. I cannot stand mashed potatoes. And I never have ever since I was a kid, which is interesting because I know a lot of people, they tell me that like that was the secret food that their parents like, gave them to secretly feed them vegetables. But I could never do it. It's like a texture thing. I love roasted potatoes. Those are fine, but no mashed potatoes. Are you a big mashed potato guy?
Okay, I just blacked out, and I'm just gonna pretend like I didn't hear you. Yeah, I mean, mashed potatoes are key here. I think I've been stocking up on stock. I've been making a bunch of stock over the last couple of weeks, some like nice mushroom stuff, just because I have a lot of friends for Friendsgiving who are vegan or just don't eat poultry or anything like that. So making some good mushroom stock. Mashed potatoes are for sure up there. And then, yeah, I agree with Brussels sprouts. I think Brussels sprouts are a good move, or like green beans, some sort of roasted vibe. And I also appreciate a good homemade stuffing. And then my perfect combo that I've found for desserts are like an apple tart and a pumpkin pie. I know some people don't love pumpkin pie, but since I was very young, I was just obsessed with pumpkin pie. So that's kind of my spread. And then also, yeah, just welcoming other people to bring what they've got as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, I agree with you. Pumpkin pie, I didn't really like it as a kid. Love it now. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. And then I think we're going to have some kind of like espresso mocha pie or something that my girlfriend is baking.
Like a nice little tart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be great.
I appreciate you joining us, Jimmy, and I hope you have a great time perfecting your menu this weekend.
Thank you. You as well, Blake.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Evelyn Avitia, Grant Irving, and Noah Snyderman. I write our Hey Boise newsletter with the help of Adrian Gonzalez this week. Our music is by local band Up As The Down As The. If you enjoyed our show today, send it to a friend. We'll be back on Tuesday with more stories from around the city. See you later. Hey, Jimmy, it's great to have you back on the show. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course, Blake. I was happy to come in.
Awesome.
I was happy to come on. We can probably redo that.
Okay.